The diner was nearly empty when he walked in. I noticed him immediately, not because he was particularly loud or demanding attention, but because of the way he carried himself. Like someone who'd just lost something important and was still figuring out how to stand upright without it. He wore a battered leather jacket over a flannel shirt, dark jeans worn soft at the knees, and boots that had seen better days. His hair was dark and slightly too long, falling into eyes that wouldn't quite meet mine when I approached his table. "Coffee?" I asked, holding up the pot. He nodded once, barely a movement, and I poured. His hands wrapped around the mug like he was trying to absorb its warmth. Even though the diner's heating was working overtime against the December cold outside, through the window behind him, snow was just beginning to fall over the small Montana town I'd called home for the past 3 years ever since I'd left. Seattle and everything I thought I wanted behind. "Menu's on the table," I said gently. "Kitchen's open for another hour." "Thanks." His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much recently. Or maybe like he'd used it too much for all the wrong reasons, crying, shouting, saying goodbye. I left him alone. Returning to the counter where my coworker Brenda was wiping down the coffee station for the 3rd time that shift, she raised her eyebrows at me, tilting her head toward the stranger. "New face," she said quietly. "Looks like he's been through it." "Yeah," I agreed, glancing back. He was staring into his coffee, like it held answers he desperately needed. The thing about working the late shift at a roadside diner in a town of 1,500 people is that you become a sort of accidental confidant. People pass through truckers, travelers, folks running from something or toward something else, and sometimes they talk. Sometimes they don't. I'd learned not to push, to simply offer coffee and a listening ear if they wanted it. 20 minutes passed before he finally looked at the menu. When I returned to take his order, I caught a better look at his face. He was probably around my age, late 20s, maybe 30, with strong features that would have been striking if they weren't currently etched with exhaustion. A few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw, and there was a fading bruise on his cheekbone that made something protective flare in my chest. "What's good here?" he asked, and this time his eyes met mine. They were hazel, I noticed green and gold, and something darker all mixed together. "Depends what you're hungry for," I said. "The meatloaf's honest comfort food. Chicken pot pie if you want something warm. But if you're looking for my recommendation, ... I leaned in slightly, conspiratorially. "The patty melt. Brenda's been perfecting it for 20 years. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Patty melt it is. Good choice." I scribbled it down. "I'm Ethan, by the way, Cole." He extended his hand, and when I shook it, his grip was firm despite the weariness in his posture. His palm was calloused, the hand of someone who worked with them. "Thanks for, being normal." I wanted to ask what he meant by that, but instead I just smiled. Normal's our specialty. When I brought his food out 15 minutes later, he ate like someone remembering they had a body that needed fuel. Not rushed, but methodical. I refreshed his coffee twice, and each time he offered that almost smile, that slight softening around his eyes. The diner emptied further as the evening wore on. By 9:30, it was just Cole, an elderly regular named Frank, reading his newspaper in the corner booth, and us. Brenda had retreated to the kitchen to start prep for tomorrow, leaving me to handle the front. I was wiping down tables when Cole finally spoke again. "You from around here?" I glanced up. He was watching me now, some of the fog seeming to have lifted from his expression. "Transplant," I said. "Seattle originally. Came out here 3 years ago for a change of pace." "That's one hell of a change, yeah? Well," I folded the cleaning cloth, moving to lean against the booth across from him. The informality felt right, somehow like we'd skipped past the stranger phase into something more honest. Sometimes you need to get far away from everything you know to figure out who you actually are. His eyes sharpened with recognition. "That why you're here? Figuring yourself out?" I think I've mostly figured it out now." I paused, studying him. "You look like you're at the beginning of that journey." Cole let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been there." For a moment, I thought he might open up, but then he seemed to think better of it. He pulled out his wallet, battered brown leather that matched his jacket, left cash on the table, including a generous tip. Thanks for the food and the ... conversation. Anytime. I meant it. There was something about him that pulled at me, made me want to know his story. You staying in town? Motel down the road. Not sure how long. He stood, shrugging into his jacket. Guess I'll figure that out too. Well, if you need a decent meal and mediocre conversation, you know where to find me. I aimed for lightness and was rewarded with that almost smile again. A little closer to the real thing this time. Mediocre, huh? I'm working on it. Give me a few more years. This time he did smile, quick and unexpected, transforming his face entirely. My heart did something complicated in my chest, a flutter of awareness I immediately tried to ignore. He was a stranger passing through. I was the waiter who'd served him a patty melt. That was all. See you around, Ethan, Cole said, and then he was gone. The door chiming behind him, as he walked out into the snow, Brenda emerged from the kitchen as I was clearing his table. You get a name? Cole. He coming back? I looked at the cash on the table, at the empty mug still sitting there, felt something in my gut that might have been intuition. Yeah, I said quietly. I think he will. Cole became a regular over the next week. He'd come in around 7 each evening, always taking the same booth by the window, always ordering coffee first and then studying the menu like he hadn't memorized it 3 days ago. I learned to anticipate his order, the patty melt that first night, then the meatloaf, the pot roast. Cycling through Brenda's comfort food repertoire, like he was methodically working through something that required fuel and warmth, we talked in fragments. In the spaces between orders and coffee refills, I learned he'd grown up on a ranch in Wyoming, that he could rope a steer and fix a fence and ride a horse before he could properly read. I learned he was a farrier by trade, traveling from ranch to ranch, shoeing horses and making enough to get by. It's good work, he said one night, wrapping his hands around his coffee mug in that way that had become familiar. Honest. Horses don't care about anything except whether you're kind and whether you know what you're doing. Sounds peaceful, I said. Wiping down the booth next to him, it was. Something shadowed his expression. It is. The correction was deliberate, but the past tense had slipped out first, and I wondered what he was running from. Or who you ever miss Seattle? He asked, deflecting. I considered the question, really thought about it. Sometimes, I miss my sister. She still lives there with her husband and their kids. I miss good Thai food and decent coffee shops, but I gestured at the diner around us, at the snow falling gently outside, at the quiet simplicity of it all. This fits me better. Seattle was who I thought I should be. This is who I actually am. Cole's eyes held mine for a moment longer than necessary. And who's that? Still working on the full answer, I admitted, but someone quieter than I used to be. Someone who doesn't need the noise to feel alive. He nodded slowly, something like understanding passing across his features. That makes sense? What about you? I asked, emboldened by his attention. Who are you? Cole the farrier from Wyoming? His smile was rueful. That's the question, isn't it? Before I could push further, Brenda called me back to the kitchen, and the moment passed. But it stayed with me through the rest of my shift. That look in his eyes, lost and searching and maybe, just maybe, starting to hope he'd find what he was looking for. It became a pattern. Cole would come in, I'd serve him, we'd talk in those comfortable pauses. He never stayed past closing, but he'd linger longer each night. An extra cup of coffee, another few minutes of conversation. I learned his laugh, rare, but genuine when it appeared. Usually at something self-deprecating, or at one of Brenda's increasingly bold attempts to set me up with every single person in a 50-mile radius. I'm telling you, Brenda said, one night after Cole had left. The Wilson girl would be perfect for you. Pretty smart, works at the library, Brenda, I interrupted gently. I'm gay. She blinked at me, wooden spoon dripping spaghetti sauce. Oh, well, why didn't you say so earlier? It never came up? She returned to stirring, unbothered. Well, there's that nice young man who works at the feed store, Travis. Real sweet boy. Always polite. I appreciate the thought. But I'm good. You've been single the whole time you've worked here. I know. She gave me a look that said she had opinions about that, but would save them for later. What about that Cole fellow? He's single. My hand slipped, nearly dropping the plate I was holding. What? We barely know each other. Uh-huh. Brenda's smile was knowing. Boy, I've been watching people for 63 years. I know pining when I see it. I'm not pining.
Sure you're not?
And I'm the Queen of England. I didn't dignify that with a response, but heat crept up my neck anyway. Because maybe she had a point. Maybe I had started looking forward to Cole's arrivals a little too much. Started paying attention to the way his shoulders relaxed over the course of his meal. Started memorizing the exact shade of his eyes when the diner's warm lights hit them. That Friday, Cole came in earlier than usual, around 5 instead of 7. And he wasn't alone. The man with him was tall and weathered, probably in his 50s, with the bow-legged walk of someone who'd spent most of his life on horseback. They took Cole's usual booth. Something about Cole's body language was different. Tenser, more guarded. I approached with menus and my professional smile. Evening, gentlemen. Coffee. Please, the older man said, his voice carrying that slow Western drawl. His eyes were sharp, assessing me with the quick judgment of someone used to evaluating things: livestock, land, people. You must be Ethan. Cole's mentioned you. Had he? My gaze flickered to Cole, who was suddenly very interested in his menu. A faint flush colored his cheeks. All good things, I hope, I said lightly, pouring coffee. He said you make a mean recommendation. That true? Depends on your taste. What are you hungry for? The man, Tom, he introduced himself as owner of a ranch about 40 miles north, ordered the steak and eggs. Cole got his usual patty melt, and I retreated to put in their order. My mind spinning. Through the window between the kitchen and the dining room, I watched them talk. Tom did most of the talking, leaning forward with the intensity of someone making a case. Cole listened, his expression carefully neutral, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. Whatever they were discussing, it was serious. When I brought their food out, some of the tension had eased. Tom was telling a story about a horse that had kicked through a fence, and Cole was almost smiling. Sounds like you've got your hands full, I said, setting down their plates. Always, Tom agreed. But it's good work. Actually, that's part of why I'm here. He looked at Cole. I've been trying to convince this stubborn son of a gun to come work for me permanent, could use a good farrier on staff, especially one who knows his way around a ranch. Cole shifted uncomfortably. I told you, Tom, I'm not sure I'm staying, and I'm telling you, you'd be a fool not to consider it. Pays good, you'd have your own cabin, and Lord knows you could use a place to settle for a while. There was something weighted in that last sentence, something that made Cole's jaw tighten. I topped off their coffee, pretending not to notice the sudden tension. Think about it, Tom said, his voice gentler. Doors open as long as you need it to be.
Ow.
After Tom left clasping Cole's shoulder in a fatherly gesture that seemed to mean something, Cole sat alone in his booth, staring at his half-finished coffee. The diner had filled up with the Friday evening crowd, but I managed to slip away long enough to check on him. You okay? I asked quietly. He looked up, and there was something raw in his expression. Vulnerable. Yeah, just thinking about Tom's offer. Among other things, he paused. Can I ask you something? Sure, when you left Seattle, was it scary? Starting over like that? I slid into the booth across from him, knowing Brenda would cover for me for a few minutes. Terrifying, I admitted. I didn't know anyone here. Didn't have a plan beyond get far away and figure it out, but it was also freeing, like I could finally breathe. What were you running from? The question was direct, but not invasive. He was asking because he understood, because he was running too. Expectations, I said. My family's, my friends', my own. I came out when I was 24 and everyone was so supportive. But there was this weird pressure to be a certain kind of gay man, to move to Capitol Hill, to hit the clubs, to date the right people, to be visible and proud and I don't know. It just didn't fit. Cole was watching me intently now, and I realized with a small jolt that I'd never said this out loud to anyone, not even my sister. So I left, I continued. Drove until I found a place that felt quiet enough to hear myself think. Ended up here, got this job, rented a cabin about 10 miles out of town. And I found out that I'm actually pretty happy being the gay guy who lives alone in the woods and serves coffee at a diner. It's not dramatic or political or particularly brave, but it's mine. That doesn't sound like running, Cole said quietly. That sounds like finding yourself. Maybe it's both, he nodded slowly, and something passed between us on, understanding, a recognition. Whatever Cole was running from, whatever had brought him here, with that bruise on his face and that heaviness in his eyes, he was looking for the same thing I'd found. A place to breathe. A place to be himself, the offer Tom made. Cole said after a moment, "It's a good one. Better than I probably deserve. Why wouldn't you deserve it?" His laugh was bitter. Because I'm a mess. Because I just walked away from ... From everything. Because I don't know if I'm staying or going or what the hell I'm doing with my life. That's called being human, I said. And for what it's worth, you don't seem like a mess to me. You seem like someone who's figuring it out. That takes guts. He met my eyes then, really met them, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. You're easy to talk to, you know that? Hazard of the profession? No. His voice was soft but certain. It's not the job. It's you. The moment stretched between us, charged with something I was afraid to name. Then Brenda called my name, breaking the spell, and I had to get back to work. But as I walked away, I felt Cole's eyes on me, and I knew with absolute certainty that something had shifted between us. Something that couldn't be unshift. Cole took Tom's offer. He told me the following Tuesday, coming in during the late afternoon lull, when it was just me and Frank the regular. I figured, what the hell? He said, that almost smile playing at his lips. Might as well stick around for a while. See what happens? It's great, I said, and meant it, even as something complicated twisted in my chest. Relief, definitely. Happiness that he was staying. But also something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. When do you start? Already did. Been there since Monday, getting settled in. He paused. Tom's got me in one of the cabins on the property. It's small, but it's got heat and running water and a view of the mountains. It feels almost too good to be true. You deserve good things, Cole. He looked at me then with an expression I couldn't quite read. I'm starting to think maybe I do. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Cole would come in after work, usually around 6, smelling like hay and horses and the clean cold of winter air. He'd wash up in the diner bathroom first tide, hear the water running. Could picture him scrubbing the day's work from his hands and face. Then he'd take his booth, order dinner, and we'd talk. But it was different now. He was lighter somehow, the heaviness that had clung to him those first few weeks gradually lifting. He smiled more easily, laughed at Brenda's terrible jokes, started joining in the gentle ribbing between me and the kitchen staff. He was settling in, putting down roots, and watching it happen did something to me. You're staring, Brenda said one night, hip-checking me as she passed with a tray of pies. I'm not. Sugar. You look at that boy like he hung the moon and personally handed it to you on a silver platter. Brenda, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying you might want to do something about it before you wear a hole in the floor pacing around his booth. I didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. I was falling for him, had probably been falling since that first night, when he had walked in looking lost, and I'd wanted nothing more than to help him find his way, the Saturday before Christmas. Cole asked if I wanted to see the ranch. Tom's having a little holiday thing, he said, toying with his coffee mug. Nothing fancy, just the ranch hands and some neighbors. He said I could bring someone if I wanted. If you're not working, I mean, if you want to. He was nervous, I realized. Actually nervous, the way his words came out slightly rushed, the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. It was endearing and terrifying, and I was saying yes before I could overthink it. I'm off at 6. I could swing by after? The smile he gave me was brilliant. Yeah, that'd be great. When Saturday came, I changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans, a dark green Henley, and my nicest flannel shirt. Casual, but not too casual. I wanted to look good without looking like I was trying too hard, which was ridiculous because this wasn't a date. It was a holiday party at his boss's ranch with other people around, except when I pulled up to the address Cole had given me and saw him standing outside the main barn. Waiting for me, it felt like a date. He'd cleaned up to hair, still damp from a shower, wearing jeans that actually fit him properly, and a deep red button-down that made his eyes look more gold than green. When he smiled at me, getting out of my truck, my heart did that complicated thing again, and I knew I was in trouble. "You made it," he said. "You doubted me?" "Nah, just glad you're here." He led me into the barn, which had been transformed for the occasion. String lights crisscrossed the rafters, a long table groaned with food, and someone had set up a sound system playing classic country. About 20 people milled around talking and laughing, the warm buzz of a community that actually knew each other. Tom spotted us immediately, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "Ethan, glad you could make it." "Cole's been talking about you non-stop, Tom," Cole said, a warning note in his voice even as his ears went red. Tom just laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. "I'm just saying, it's good to see you making friends. Now come on, let me introduce you folks around." The next hour passed in a blur of names and faces, ranch hands and neighbors. Tom's wife Sarah, who was warm and welcoming, a few other folks from town I recognized from the diner. Everyone was friendly, but I couldn't help noticing the way some of them looked at me and Cole. A speculative gleam in their eyes, like they were trying to figure out exactly what we were to each other. I was wondering the same thing. Cole stayed close to me. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him, catch the scent of his soap, and something else underneath it that was just him. When we loaded up plates with food, our shoulders brushed. When someone told a joke, he'd lean in to catch my reaction, his breath warm against my ear. Every touch was innocent, friendly, but it set my nerves alight. "Want to get some air?" he asked eventually, when the barn had gotten warm with bodies and conversation. "Yeah, sure." We stepped outside into the cold December night. The sky was clear, stars brilliant, and impossibly numerous in the way they only are, far from city lights. My breath fogged in the air, and I shoved my hands in my pockets, wishing I'd thought to grab my jacket. Cole noticed. Of course he did. "Here," he said, shrugging out of his coat and draping it over my shoulders before I could protest. "You'll freeze." "I'm fine." Ranch work builds up cold tolerance. The coat smelled like him, and I had to resist the urge to bury my face in it. Instead, I pulled it tighter around myself and looked up at the stars. "It's beautiful out here." "Yeah." But when I glanced over, he wasn't looking at the sky. He was looking at me. My heart hammered against my ribs. The moment stretched, suspended, full of possibility and terror. I should say something, I thought. Should acknowledge this thing building between us. Should ask what he was thinking. Should Cole? Someone called from the barn. "Your phone's going off?" The moment shattered. Cole's expression shuddered, and he stepped back, putting careful distance between us. I should. I'll be right back. He disappeared into the barn, leaving me alone with the stars and the cold and the ghost of what had almost happened. I took a breath, then another, trying to steady myself. When Cole returned a few minutes later, his face was carefully blank. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just old business." He wouldn't elaborate, and I didn't push. But something had changed. The ease of earlier was gone, replaced by a tension that made my stomach knot. We stayed another hour. Cole was distant, distracted. When I finally said I should head home, he walked me to my truck, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I know it's probably not your usual Saturday night." "I had a good time. Yeah, me too." A hesitated. And for a moment, I thought he might say something else. Might address the elephant standing between us. Instead, he just said, "Drive safe, Ethan," the whole way home. I gripped the steering wheel and tried not to think about how close we'd come to something, and how quickly it had slipped away. Christmas came and went quietly. I worked a double shift at the diners. Someone had to feed the truckers and travelers, who didn't have anywhere else to buy in. Cole didn't come in at all. Tom had given the ranch hands a few days off, and apparently Cole had used them to drive somewhere. Though he didn't say where, he came back different. Not worse exactly, but quieter. More distant. He still came to the diner most evenings, but the easy conversation had turned stilted, careful. He'd answer my questions with single sentences, wouldn't meet my eyes for more than a moment before looking away. It felt like watching someone retreat into themselves, and it hurt in a way I hadn't expected. What happened? Brenda asked after he left one night, his food barely touched. I don't know. Well, you better figure it out before whatever this is eats both of you alive. But I didn't know how to figure it out. Didn't know how to reach across the distance Cole had put between us without pushing too hard. Without demanding answers, he might not be ready to give. The answer came on New Year's Eve. The diner closed. Early even Brenda had family plans, but I'd stayed late to finish inventory. Putting off going home to my empty cabin? I was locking up when I saw headlights in the parking lot. My stomach dropped when I recognized Cole's truck. He got out slowly. And even in the dim light I could tell something was wrong. He walked like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for too long, and had finally hit the point where he couldn't bear the weight anymore. Cole. I locked the door behind me and crossed the parking lot. What are you? I need to tell you something. His voice was rough, raw. I need to tell you, and I need you to just ... listen. Okay? Okay. My heart was racing now, fear and concern and something else all tangled together. Can we sit? He gestured to his truck, and I followed him, climbing into the passenger seat while he got behind the wheel. The cab smelled like him, like leather and horses and pine. For a long moment, just stared out the windshield, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. Then he started talking. I was engaged, he said. Up until 3 months ago, I was engaged to a woman named Rachel. We'd been together for 4 years. Everyone loved her, my family, my friends, people in town. She was perfect on paper. Kind, smart, pretty. We had this whole life planned out. House kids, the works. My chest tightened, but I stayed quiet, letting him continue. And I tried. God, I tried so hard to want it the way I was supposed to feel what I thought I should feel, but I couldn't. Every time we talked about the future, I felt like I was suffocating. Like I was looking at someone else's life and trying to fit myself into it. He turned to look at me then, and his eyes were wet with unshed tears. 2 months before the wedding, I broke it off. Told her I couldn't marry her, that it wouldn't be fair to either of us. And she asked me why, kept pushing for a real reason, and finally, I just ... I said it. I told her the truth, which was that I'm gay. The words came out quiet but certain. That I've known since I was 15, but I buried it so deep I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. That I thought if I just tried hard enough, if I found the right woman, I could make it work. But I couldn't. I can't. And pretending anymore was killing me. He let out a shaky breath. Everyone took it about as well as you'd expect in a town of 3,000 people, where my family's been ranching for 4 generations. My dad hasn't spoken to me since. My mom calls sometimes, but it's clear she's waiting for me to come to my senses. Half the people I've known my whole life look at me like I'm a stranger. And Rachel, she's hurt. Rightfully so. I wasted 4 years of her life because I was too much of a coward to admit the truth. Cole, that bruise you saw that first night? Her brother gave me that. Can't say I blame him. And that phone call at Tom's party? That was my ex-best friend, calling to tell me I'm not welcome at his wedding next spring. So yeah, I ran. Took every job I could find that would get me far away from Wyoming, and I ended up here. He turned to face me fully now, and the vulnerability in his expression made my heart ache. And then I met you. And you were so easy to talk to, so comfortable in yourself, so ... free. And I wanted that. I wanted to be that, but I'm not. I'm a mess, Ethan. I'm broken and scared, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And you deserve better than that. Are you done? I asked quietly. He blinked. What? Are you done telling me all the reasons I should stay away from you? Yes. Good, because that's the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. His mouth fell open slightly, and I pressed on before I could lose my nerve. Cole, you're not broken. You're brave. Do you know how much courage it takes to walk away from everything you've ever known because you finally decided to be honest? To choose yourself, even when it means losing people you love? That's not cowardice. That's strength. You don't understand. I do understand. I was terrified when I came out. Terrified my family would reject me, that my friends would disappear, that I'd lose everything that made me feel safe. And some of those things happened. My dad didn't talk to me for a year. Some friends drifted away. But you know what? The people who really mattered stayed. And I found new people who loved me for who I actually am, not who they wanted me to be. I reached across the cab and took his hand, lacing our fingers together. His hand was cold, trembling slightly, and I squeezed it gently. "You're not a mess," I said again. "You're someone who's figuring it out. And yeah, it's hard and it's scary, and sometimes it hurts like hell, but you're doing it. You're here. You're building a new life. That takes more guts than most people have. Ethan ... His voice broke on my name. As for me deserving better, I get to decide what I deserve. And what I want. And what I want. I took a breath, dizzy with fear and hope. What I want is you. If you want me to. For a moment, he just stared at me, his eyes searching my face like he was trying to convince himself this was real. Then he was moving, closing the distance between us, his free hand coming up to cup my face. "I want you," he whispered. "God, Ethan, I want you so much it scares me." Then stopped being scared. Kissed me then, soft and tentative and achingly sweet. His lips were cold from the winter air, but warmed quickly, and when I kissed him back, he made a small sound in the back of his throat that sent heat racing through me. His hand tightened on mine, the other sliding into my hair, and I melted into him. Into this moment I'd been wanting for weeks without letting myself acknowledge it. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I said honestly. "But we can figure it out together. If you want to, I want to." He kissed me again, deeper this time, with more confidence. "I really, really want to." We stayed in his truck for a long time after that, talking quietly about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up on the ranch, about the first time he realized he was different, about the years of trying to convince himself he wasn't. I told him about my own coming out, about the relief and terror of finally being honest, about finding this place and building a life that felt authentic. "Stay with me tonight," I said eventually. "Not. We don't have to do anything. I just don't want to let you go yet." His smile was soft, genuine, reaching his eyes in a way I'd never seen before. "Okay?" We drove in convoy to my cabin, him following my taillights through the dark, winding roads. Inside, I built up the fire while he looked around at my small space, the secondhand furniture. The books stacked on every surface, the photographs of my sister's kids on the mantle. "It's nice," he said. "Feels like you. Organized chaos. Warm. Safe." I pulled him down onto the couch, and we sat close, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and felt something in me settle into place. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for listening, for not running. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me." We fell asleep like that, tangled together on the couch, the fire burning low as the new year arrived outside without us noticing. The next few weeks felt like learning a new language, one made of glances and touches, of inside jokes and quiet moments. Cole and I navigated the newness of being together with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. Figuring out what we were to each other one day at a time, he still came to the diner most evenings. But now, when I'd set down his coffee, he'd catch my hand and squeeze it quickly before letting go. Brenda noticed immediately, of course, and her knowing smile could have lit up the whole county. She didn't say anything, but she started making sure I got my breaks when Cole was there, giving us time to sit together in his booth and talk without interruption.
Oh.
"You look happy," she said one night, and the simple observation made my chest warm. "I am," I admitted. "Good. You deserve it. Both of you do." The town being small meant word got around, but it happened gradually, quietly. One of Tom's ranch hands saw us together at the hardware store, hands brushing as we looked at light fixtures from my cabin. Frank the regular noticed the way Cole waited for me after my shifts. Small observations that added up to understanding. The response was ... mixed. Some people were supportive, others carefully neutral. A few were actively hostile, caught whispers sometimes, saw the way certain customers would request Brenda instead of me. It stung, but it didn't cut the way I'd feared it might. Because I'd been through this before. And I knew the people who mattered would come around or were already on our side. Cole struggled more with it. He'd lived his whole life trying to fit into a mold, and breaking out of it meant facing judgment from people whose opinions he'd valued. One night in mid-January, he showed up at my cabin just after dark, his jaw tight with barely suppressed anger. "What happened?" I asked, pulling him inside. "Ran into my brother at the feed store." He paced my small living room like a caged animal. "He's in town visiting friends. Saw me coming out. Asked if the rumors were true. If we were ... What did you say?" I told him yes. That you're my boyfriend, and I'm not ashamed of that. He stopped pacing, running a hand through his hair. He called me a disgrace. Said I'd destroyed our family's reputation. That Dad was right to cut me off. I crossed to him, taking his face in my hands. "Look at me. Your brother's opinion doesn't define you. Your father's rejection doesn't make you less than. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve space in your life." His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "It still hurts. I know. And that's okay. Let it hurt. But don't let it make you doubt yourself." He pulled me into a fierce hug, burying his face against my neck. I held him, one hand stroking his back, feeling the tension slowly drain from his body. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he murmured. "Good thing you don't have to find out." We lay in my bed, not sleeping but not quite talking either, just existing in the same space. His fingers traced patterns on my arm, idle and soothing, and I turned to look at him in the dim light filtering through the curtains. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything. That first night you came into the diner, you looked like you'd lost everything. But you also looked determined. Like you'd made a choice and were sticking to it no matter what. What were you thinking?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "I was thinking that I'd rather be alone and honest than surrounded by people who only loved a lie. That even if I never figured out how to be happy, at least I'd know I'd tried to be real." He turned to face me. "I didn't expect to find you. Didn't expect to find this. But I'm so glad I did. Me too." Kissed me then, slow and deep, and I lost myself in the taste of him. The feel of his hands sliding under my shirt, the quiet sounds he made when I kissed down his neck. We'd been taking things slowly, neither of us in a rush, both of us savoring the discovery of each other. But that night felt different, charged with something more urgent. "Ethan," he breathed, and I heard the question in my name. "I want. Can we ... double quotes, are you sure?" "I'm sure." He pulled back to look at me, and his eyes were clear, certain. "I'm sure about you." About us, I kissed him again, pouring every ounce of feeling into it, and we let the rest of the world fall away. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Cole's arm draped across my waist. He was still asleep, his face relaxed and peaceful in a way I'd never seen before. And something fierce and protective surged in my chest. This man, this brave, beautiful, sometimes broken man, who'd chosen honesty over comfort, who was rebuilding his entire life from scratch, who'd let me in despite every reason he had to guard his heart. I was falling for him, had fallen, was in deep enough that the thought of losing him made my chest ache. As if sensing my thoughts, his eyes fluttered open. When he saw me watching him, a slow smile spread across his face. Morning yourself. What time is it?" I glanced at the clock. "Almost 8. You don't have to be at the ranch until 9, right?" "Yeah." He pulled me closer, nuzzling into my neck. "Good. I'm not ready to leave this bed yet. No arguments here." We lay there in comfortable silence, and I thought about how much had changed in just 2 months. How Cole had gone from a stranger with haunted eyes to the person I wanted to wake up next to every morning. How I'd gone from contentedly alone to happily, terrifyingly in love. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his breath warm against my skin. "That I'm falling in love with you," I said, the words escaping before I could second-guess them. "And that it doesn't scare me as much as I thought it would." He went very still. Then he propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Yeah. My heart hammered, but I didn't take it back. "I know it's fast, and I know we're still figuring things out, but I love you too," he interrupted. "I think I started falling that first night. When you recommended the patty melt and looked at me like I was worth taking care of, and I've been falling ever since." The kiss we shared then was different from any before. Not just heat and want, but something deeper. Something that felt like promise and possibility and forever, all wrapped together. February brought a cold snap that had everyone in town bundling up and Tom's ranch hands working, double time to keep the horses comfortable. Cole's days got longer, his visits to the diner less frequent. But we'd text throughout the day, simple things. Photos of the horses, complaints about the cold, just staying connected. When we did see each other, usually late at night at my cabin, we'd fall into bed exhausted and wake up tangled together. And it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Then his phone rang at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I woke to Cole, sitting on the edge of the bed. Phone pressed to his ear, his bare back rigid with tension. "No, Mom, I can't. That's not—" He listened for a long moment, then, "I'll think about it. I have to go." He ended the call and just sat there, and I reached out to touch his shoulder. "Cole, my mom." His voice was flat. "Dad's sick. Heart problems. He's in the hospital, and she wants me to come home." I sat up, fully awake now. "Are you going to?" "I don't know." Turned to look at me, and his face was a mask of conflicting emotions. Part of me wants to tell her no, that he made his choice when he cut me off. But he's still my father. And if something happened, and I didn't go, then you go, I said simply. You go, and you deal with whatever happens, and you come back. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, but it's right. You'll regret it if you don't. He was quiet for a long time, then nodded slowly. "God, will you come with me?" The question caught me off guard. "To Wyoming?" "I know it's a lot to ask. And you probably can't get time off work, and it's a long drive, and yes." He blinked. Yes, I'll come with you. If you want me there, I'm there." The relief on his face was palpable. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I felt him shaking slightly. "Thank you. God, thank you." We left 2 days later, after I'd arranged. Coverage at the diner and Cole had gotten Tom's blessing for emergency leave. The drive took most of a day, heading east through Montana and down into Wyoming. Watching the landscape shift from mountains to high plains, Cole got quieter the closer we got, tension settling into his shoulders like a familiar coat. I drove, the last leg, letting him sit with his thoughts, occasionally reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Tell me about it," I said eventually. "Your hometown. Small, maybe 3,000 people. Everyone knows everyone, and your reputation is everything. The Sterling family, that's us, we've been there since the 1880s. My great-great-grandfather homesteaded the land, built the ranch from nothing. My dad's incredibly proud of that legacy, and you were supposed to carry it on. 5th-generation rancher, marry a local girl, have kids to pass it down to. That was the plan." His laugh was bitter. Coming out didn't just disappoint him. It broke the whole narrative he'd built about our family. "That's his problem, not yours." "I know. But knowing it and feeling it are different things." We arrived in the early evening, pulling up to a modest house on the edge of town. Before Cole could even turn off the engine, the front door opened and a woman appeared 50s. With Cole's eyes and a weariness that spoke of months of stress. "Mom," Cole said, getting out of the truck. She met him halfway up the walk. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then she pulled him into a hug, and he wrapped his arms around her like he was 12 years old again. "I'm glad you came," she said quietly. "How is he?" "Stable. The surgery went well, but She trailed off, noticing me for the first time. "Oh, you must be Ethan." I stepped forward, offering my hand. "Mrs. Sterling, thank you for having me." She shook it, and something complicated passed. Across her face, not hostility, but not exactly welcome either. Uncertainty? Maybe? Like she was trying to reconcile what she'd been taught with what was standing in front of her. "Come inside," she said eventually. "Both of you. You must be exhausted." The house was exactly what I'd imagined, clean but lived in. Full of family photos and Western art, a worn couch in the living room that had clearly hosted decades of family gatherings. Mrs. Sterling busied herself making coffee while Cole gave me a quick tour, his voice low and tense. "My old room's upstairs," he said. "Though I don't know if... we can probably stay at a motel if that's easier." "Whatever you're comfortable with." His mom appeared in the doorway. "You'll stay here. Both of you." I already made up Cole's room. There's a pull-out couch in the office if you need it." The implication was clear: separate sleeping arrangements, maintaining propriety even in her uncertainty. Cole looked at me, a silent question, and I nodded. "We could handle this. Thank you, Mrs. Sterling. Call me Diane, please." Dinner was awkward, the three of us making small talk around the elephant in the room. Cole told his mom about Tom's ranch, about his work as a farrier, carefully editing out any mention of us, of our relationship. I talked about the diner, about Montana, keeping things light and neutral. But when Diane asked how we'd met, Cole reached under the table and took my hand. "Ethan's the waiter at the diner I've been going to. We became friends first. Then," he took a breath. "Then it became more. He's my boyfriend, Mom, and he's important to me." Diane set down her coffee cup carefully. "See, I know this isn't what you wanted from me. I know it's hard for you to understand, but this is who I am. Ethan makes me happy in a way I've never been before. So if you can't accept that, if you need me to leave, I will. But I'm not going to pretend anymore."
Right.
For a long moment, Diane just looked at her son. Then she looked at me, really looked like she was trying to see what Cole saw. "Does he treat you well?" she asked Cole. "Better than I probably deserve? Then that's what matters." She stood, collecting the dishes. "Your father may not understand, but I'm trying. That's all I can promise right now. I'm trying." It wasn't acceptance, not quite. But it was a start. Cole's father was in the hospital for 3 more days. Cole visited every afternoon, usually alone at first while I stayed at the house, giving them space. Diane and I fell into an unexpected rhythm. She'd work on her quilting. I'd read or help, with small tasks around the house, and we'd talk in fits and starts. "He was such a sweet boy," she said one afternoon, showing me photo albums. There was Cole at 8, grinning gap-toothed on a horse. At 12, holding a trophy from some rodeo competition. 16, already tall and serious-eyed, standing with his father in front of the ranch. Always trying to please everyone. I should have seen how much he was hurting. You couldn't have known if he didn't tell you. Mother should know. She touched the photo gently. "I failed him. You're here now. That's what matters." She looked at me then, and some of the wariness had softened. "You love him." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, ma'am, I do." "Good. He needs someone who sees him, really sees him. Rachel never did, though she tried. He told me about her. It was my fault, pushing that relationship. I thought if he just found the right girl, he'd be happy. But you can't force someone to be something they're not." She paused. "I'm sorry he had to leave to find himself. I wish we could have given him that here. Maybe you still can. There's still time." She smiled, sad but hopeful. "Maybe there is." On the 4th day, Cole asked me to come to the hospital with him. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I need you there, please." His father was in a private room, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. He was a larger man than I'd expected, weathered and stern, even laid up in a hospital bed. His eyes sharpened when he saw Cole, then narrowed when he saw me behind him. "Dad," Cole said, his voice steady despite the tension vibrating through him. "How are you feeling? Been better? Doctor says I'll live, though your mother seems determined to worry me to death." His gaze flicked to me. "Who's this?" "This is Ethan, my boyfriend."
Oh.
The word hung in the air like a challenge. Robert Sterling's jaw tightened. But he didn't explode the way I'd half expected. Instead, he just stared at his son for a long moment. "So it's true then, what everyone's been saying." "Yeah, Dad, it's true. I'm gay. I'm in love with Ethan. And I'm not ashamed of either of those things. You should be." The words were harsh, but there was something underneath them that sounded almost like grief. "You threw away everything. Your engagement, your reputation, your place in this family. For what? To chase some phase?" "It's not a phase." Cole's voice was firm. "This is who I've always been. I just finally stopped lying about it." "You were happy with Rachel?" "I was pretending with Rachel. And it was killing me." Cole moved closer to the bed. "Dad, I know you don't understand. I know this isn't the life you wanted for me, but it's my life. And I'm finally living it honestly. That has to count for something." Robert looked at me then, a long assessing stare. "You put these ideas in his head." "No, sir," I said calmly. "Cole figured himself out long before he met me. I'm just lucky enough that he let me be part of his life." "Lucky," he scoffed. "You know what people say about him now? About our family?" "I know what small-minded people say," I replied. "But the people who matter know that Cole is one of the best men I've ever met. He's honest, hardworking, and brave enough to choose truth over comfort. That's more than most people can say." Something flickered in Robert's eyes, surprise, maybe, or a grudging respect. He turned back to Cole. "Your mother wants me to forgive you, to welcome you back like nothing's changed." "Nothing has changed," Cole said quietly. "I'm still your son. I still know how to work a ranch, how to shoe a horse, how to fix a fence. The only thing that's different is that I'm not lying anymore. Everything's changed. Then I guess that's your choice to make." Cole's voice cracked slightly, but he held his ground. "I came because Mom asked me to, because no matter what happened between us, you're still my father. But I'm not going to apologize for being who I am. If you can't accept that, then I'll walk out of here and you'll never have to see me again." The room went silent except for the beeping monitors. I wanted to reach for Cole to offer comfort, but this moment was his. He needed to do this himself. Finally, Robert spoke. "The doctor says I need to reduce stress, that another heart attack could kill me. Dad, I'm not saying I understand. I'm not saying I approve. But your mother would never forgive me if I died with this between us." He looked away. "Stay for dinner tomorrow, both of you. We'll talk." It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't even close. But it was something, a hairline crack in a wall that had seemed impenetrable. "Okay," Cole said. "We'll be there." Outside in the hospital parking lot, Cole leaned against his truck and let out a shaky breath. "That was brutal," I finished. "Yeah." I pulled him into a hug, and he clung to me like I was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "I'm proud of you," I said into his hair. "You stood your ground. You told your truth. That takes incredible strength. I couldn't have done it without you here." "Sure you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." We stood there for a long time, just holding each other in the cold Wyoming afternoon. I thought about how far Cole had come. From that broken man who'd walked into my diner 2 months ago too? This standing in the wreckage of his old life and building something new from the pieces. Dinner at the Sterling house the next night was tense but civil. Robert didn't say much, but he didn't leave the table either. He asked Cole about the ranch in Montana, about his work, and though the questions were gruff, they were genuine. It was a start. Diane kept the conversation moving, asking me about my family, about Seattle, gently building bridges. When Desert was served her famous apple pie, Cole had mentioned Drobert, even nodded when I complimented it. As we were leaving, Diane hugged Cole tightly. "Come back and visit," she said. "When you can. I want to know about your life. Your real life." "I will, Mom. I promise." She turned to me. "Take care of him. Always." The drive back to Montana felt lighter somehow. Even though we both knew Cole's relationship with his father would take years to heal if it ever fully did, but the door was open now, just a crack, and that was more than Cole had dared hope for. "Thank you," he said, as we crossed back into Montana, the mountains rising ahead of us. "For coming with me. For standing next to me. For being you. It's what love is," I said simply. Showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He reached across the console and laced his fingers through mine. I love you, Ethan. I love you too. And as we drove home toward our life, our future, everything we were building together, I felt something settle deep in my chest. This was it. This was what I'd been looking for when I'd left Seattle all those years ago. Not just a place, but a person. Not just peace, but purpose. Cole was my home now, and I was his. Spring came late to Montana that year. Winter clinging stubbornly until mid-April, before finally loosening its grip. When it did, the transformation was sudden and beautiful snow melting to reveal green grass. Wildflowers exploding across the meadows. The world waking up. Cole had been living at my cabin since we'd gotten back from Wyoming. It had happened gradually. Naturally, a few nights turned into a week into a month, until one day we realized all his stuff was here, and neither of us wanted him to leave. I should probably give up the cabin at Tom's place, he said one morning in late April. Both of us sitting on my porch with coffee, watching the sunrise paint the mountains pink and gold. Probably, I agreed. Unless you're planning to move back. Not a chance. He set down his mug and pulled me closer. This is home now. You're home. I kissed him, soft and sweet, still marveling at how easy this was. How right. We'd had our challenges adjusting to living together. Navigating the small-town gossip, working through Cole's lingering guilt and my own fears about being truly vulnerable with someone, but we'd faced each challenge together, learning how to be partners in the truest sense. Brenda's threatening to make us a cake, I said. To celebrate our, what did she call it? Domestic bliss. Cole laughed. Of course she is. She's also hinting that we should get a dog. Is she now? Very unsubtly. She brought dog adoption pamphlets to work last week. What do you think about that? Cole asked, his tone carefully casual. I considered it. The cabin was feeling less like my space and more like our space. Adding a dog would make it even more permanent, more real. I think it would be nice to have something that's ours, together. Smile was brilliant. Yeah. A week later, we adopted a mutt from the shelter, part border collie, part Hunaswat, with mismatched ears and the most expressive eyes I'd ever seen. We named her Scout, and she immediately claimed the spot between us on the couch as her own. Tom came by one Saturday in May, ostensibly to check on a horse, but really to see how we were doing. He found us in the yard, Cole teaching me the basics of roping while Scout barked encouragement. You're terrible at this, Cole said. Laughing as my rope fell short again. I'm a waiter. Not a cowboy. Could have fooled me. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, adjusting my grip on the rope. Here, like this. Tom cleared his throat, and we jumped apart like teenagers caught making out. He just grinned. Don't mind me. Just wanted to see how you two were settling in, good, Cole said, his ears a bit red. Really good. Glad to hear it. Tom's expression turned more serious. I also wanted to ask, Cole, how'd you feel about taking on an apprentice? Young kid from town, Travis, wants to learn farrier work. Thought you might be willing to teach him? Cole's face lit up. Yeah, I'd love that. Good. He'll start next week. Tom tipped his hat. You boys have a good day. And Cole, I'm proud of you. You should know that. After he left, Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to me. I never thought I'd have this. A place where people know me, really know me and accept it. A job I love. You. He cupped my face in his hands. I thought coming out meant losing everything, but I think I actually found everything instead. We found each other, I corrected. Everything else is just bonus. That night, as we lay in bed with Scout sprawled across our feet, Cole traced lazy patterns on my arm. Can I tell you something? Always. That first night at the diner, when you looked at me like I was worth taking care of, I thought maybe I could survive. But I didn't think I'd ever be happy again. He propped himself up to look at me. I was so wrong. I'm not just surviving. I'm living. And it's because of you. It's because of you too, I said. You did the hard part. You chose yourself. I just gotta be there when you did. It's the best decision I ever made. Which one? Coming out or dating me? Both. He kissed me, and I tasted his smile against my lips. Definitely both. Outside, spring rain started to fall, gentle and steady. Scout huffed in her sleep, and Cole pulled me closer, and I thought about how far we'd both come. From loneliness and fear and uncertainty to this love to home. To a future we were building together one day at a time. It wasn't perfect. We still had bad days, still struggled with his family's slow acceptance and the occasional narrow-minded neighbor. But we had each other. And we had this our cabin, our dog, our life that was messy and beautiful and entirely ours. "Hey, Ethan?" Cole murmured, half asleep. "Yeah." "Thank you for the patty melt." I laughed softly. Best recommendation I ever made. Damn right it was. And as I drifted off to sleep, wrapped in his arms with rain drumming on the roof, I thought about that December night when a stranger had walked into my diner looking lost, about how I'd offered him coffee and a meal and accidentally offered him my heart too, about how the best things in life often happen when you're just trying to be kind, about how love doesn't always look like fireworks and grand gestures. Sometimes it looks like coffee at a diner, like standing together in hospital rooms, like teaching each other to rope and learning what home really means, and about how sometimes the person who walks into your life at exactly the right moment isn't just passing through. Sometimes they're exactly where they're supposed to be, just like Cole was exactly where he was supposed to be here, with me, building a life that was honest and real and ours. And that was more than enough. It was everything. The end.